So to conclude things for today, I wanted to just bring up the subject to something I talked about in the recent editor's chair, and it was related to the inconsistency of decisions on disqualifications. I know Peter Harnden been pushing for an appeals procedure for a long time because he didn't think that there was consistency in racing offices in their deciding about the disqualification of dogs. Have either of you two got strong views on the subject?
It's a very difficult one. It is a subjective decision. I've stood in stewards' boxes, and you know, there are 4 or 5 people in the box, and you know, the view is different amongst all. You know, it's split. The verdict is split. At the end of the day, racing manager would make that decision. I think there is a real argument for an appeal process, because there are, you know, and I know from past experience, there are decisions sometimes that are taken in the heat of the moment and in all good faith. But if you look at it in the cold light of day, when you calm down a little bit, you know, you may have taken a different decision. So I think it's, you know, it's not pointing a finger at a steward to say you've got it wrong. It's basically getting it right for the owner, because that is a major decision. You disqualify a dog, you may have finished its career, and then you've got the welfare issue to consider. So I think any route that one can take to make that decision clear and correct is probably the right one.
Yeah, I want to bounce this out to David. One of the things that occurs to me was that when these rules were originally instigated, and they don't appear to have changed in my kind of memory, they were originally drawn up before we even had video cameras. Now, a racing manager or stewards or however many of them, they don't have to make an instant decision. We do have videos. In some cases, we could perhaps even improve them with videos along the straights, sort of looking down the line, which I think a couple of the tracks have got already. David, do you think that should make a difference?
I think there's huge discrepancies at the moment, which is creating a lot of distrust within the sport. I did see recently a dog that was at an open, you know, you could argue it was deserved to be disqualified. And then I seen another dog in a graded race that did pretty much exactly the same thing, if not worse, and didn't get disqualified. Now, that's then created this distrust as racing offices grade as more valuable to racing offices than open dogs because they need them for the strength. Now, it's not a nice place to be as a sport when these kind of questions come up, but as you've alluded to there, technology's moved on so far. I was talking to Paul Lawrence about Lifford not so long ago, saying about putting GoPros in front of the traps. We see it at Swindon. With the way that technology's moved on now, there has to be, we have to move along with, as technology moves along, we have, as a sport, we need to move along. We can't have rules that existed when we didn't have TV cameras and expect them to still be relevant now. So I don't understand why the GBGB, and this comes, like, brings you on to another point really, is why we have to spend so much time discussing it before things change. Why are we in 2022 and we're not reviewing these rules, even trialing different ideas? Why are we leaving it up to racing offices? And in this situation, you've got owners spending proper money as well on dogs, and when they do get DQ'd, it's game over for them.
Yeah, I mean, you could even make a case almost to have because we've got the video option, to have the dogs independently verified by maybe a panel of 3 who could view them all. Because one of my concerns is that, and I highlighted it in the editor's chair, we had a race where a bitch was disqualified. We had a race where she'd run previously and she wasn't the offender. Another dog turned on her, and there wasn't even a mark of awkward or checked or anything similar. At least if you had a panel that you basically say, right, well, this greyhound is suspended for 72 hours or whatever, the panel will look at this, and at least they would be comparing all similar types of incidents, because at the moment I'm not sure what disqualification is anymore.
No, I agree with you. That I mean, it's the wording as well, but I think it needs an independent view. I mean, every track has a stipendiary steward attached. There'd be no reason why perhaps a stipendiary steward couldn't review the race meeting on the video, and if there were any discrepancies within the races, then that's referred to a panel to make a judgment. I mean, the problem is racing officers get so much pressure, firstly on strength, as David has alluded to, but also from trainers. You know, some trainers, they know sometimes their dogs have had a fight, and they'll be straight on the phone and they'll be making excuses. They'll be referring to other animals, other greyhounds that have perhaps been not disqualified doing the same thing. Just makes their life very much more difficult. I think an independent view would take that pressure away from the racing office and let somebody else decide whether that dog should be disqualified or not.
Yeah, I guess one of the other options that we used to have, that we barely have anymore, of course, is putting some of these dogs over hurdles when they are genuinely dishonest. What have we got now? We've got Crayford that run a few opens.
It's very sad that code is disappearing from the calendar, really. If it was not Ricky Holloway or Barry O'Sullivan or a couple of other trainers putting dogs up, we wouldn't have any hurdle racing, and that used to be my favourite sport, favourite part of greyhound racing.
The thing is, as well, Barry, it protects a racing officer as well. Like you've just said it from a racing officer's point of view, getting phone calls off trainers and the aggro and the chew about what's happened in a race and making a decision. It takes the pressure from a racing office, because the racing office can say, look, I've sent it away for a review now. It's away for a review, and that's it. It takes it off their hands. And then there's no arguments then. I just baffles me how in 2022 we're still in this position, and it's not just DQs. There's lots of things in the sport that we need to be more proactive and make and make these changes as they come along, rather than just waiting 30, 40 years or whatever it is for it to come about.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, one of the other things, and we probably won't go down too far down this route today, but there are, in my view, there are far worse things going on tracks than dogs turning their heads. And I'm talking about dogs that are getting beat 20 and 25 lengths and they're out running again 4 or 5 days later. Now, at the moment, it seems to be that entirely at the discretion of the racing office, who may be short of runners. And maybe we've moved too far to a point where the racing officers have too much discretion, and for one reason or another, that the stewards are not getting involved and saying, I'd like to see that retrial.
It's same with seedings. We've talked about seeding dogs. It comes up every derby. We talk about it. That's another one, another hot topic. You've just touched on one. We've talked about DQs. There's so many issues that it seems like they come up, they flare up for a couple of weeks, and then it just dies down and nothing changes. I don't understand why we don't trial or do something about it.
Perhaps if it was affecting turnover or commercials more than it does, there probably would have been something done about it. But the fact that it's not going to directly affect the tracks, they probably don't see it as a priority. Hence, Peter Harnden is 3 years down the line and still hasn't really got what he was looking for.